What if every culture on Earth, cultures that never met, never traded, never shared a single word, all left behind the same warning? Not a story about spirits, not a moral lesson, a physical description of beings taller than a house, and bones dug out of the ground to match it. Historians call it coincidence. But myths do not leave skeletons, and these did. In 1848, a young congressman named Abraham Lincoln stood on a ship passing Niagara Falls and wrote a line in his diary. He noted that the eyes of an extinct race of giants, whose bones filled the mounds of America, had once looked at that same waterfall. Lincoln was not writing fiction. In his lifetime, digging up an oversized skeleton on a farm was closer to routine than revelation. To understand why a future president would write that sentence without flinching, you have to look past American soil entirely. Sumerian tablets, more than 4,000 years old, list kings who stood 4 and 5 meters tall, with reign lengths in the tens of thousands of years. Egyptian reliefs, Indian temple carvings, and rock art from Aboriginal Australia, 3 traditions with no contact with one another, all repeat the same proportions. A god, or a ruler, roughly twice the size of the people around him. One culture inventing a giant is myth. 3 unconnected continents agreeing on the same measurements is something else. And the odds of that happening by accident get thinner with every additional civilization that repeats the pattern. The Nippur King List, one of the oldest administrative documents ever recovered, records reign after reign in numbers so large that most modern translations quietly footnote them as symbolic. But the list was not written as poetry. It was written as a record, the same way a modern government keeps a ledger of who held office and for how long. And the deeper you look into the oldest religious texts on the planet, the harder that agreement becomes to dismiss. The Bible references giants in a dozen different books, and Goliath is the least of them. Genesis contains a line that occupied theologians for centuries, describing a time when what it calls Nephilim walked the earth. Born from a union, the text does not fully explain. The Book of Enoch, excluded from the biblical canon in the 4th century, but recovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, goes further. It describes 200 beings descending to a mountain and fathering offspring of enormous size. Offspring, the text measures in numbers so large that most translators quietly round them down. Even scaled to a fraction of the original figure, the description still points to something well beyond ordinary human height. The Greeks used 2 separate words for 2 separate races of oversized beings. Titans were the older generation, wise and deliberate. Giants were younger, wilder, born directly from the earth itself. The Norse called their version Jotnar, iceborne beings who existed before the world took its current shape. The Mahabharata describes Rakshasas who hurled trees like spears and altered their own size at will. None of these texts read each other. None of these cultures ever met. All of them describe the same thing, with the same core detail. Something taller than a person, older than recorded history, and dangerous. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What happens when you stop reading these as separate myths and start reading them as separate witnesses to the same event? In 1911, miners digging for bat guano in a Nevada cave broke into a burial chamber that did not match anything in the textbooks. The remains were unusually large, and strands of coarse red hair still clung to some of the skulls. The Paiute people living nearby were not surprised. Their oral history described a red-haired, cannibalistic people of great height who arrived by sea generations earlier, and a long war fought to drive the last of them into that same cave, where the entrance was sealed. An archaeologist from the University of California documented the site the following year, cataloging sandals and woven baskets built at a scale that did not fit an ordinary human hand. That cave was not an isolated report, 19th-century American newspapers carried headlines about oversized skeletons with a regularity that made the discoveries almost mundane, printed with the same tone as a weather report. A Minnesota mound, documented in an 1883 newspaper account, yielded a skeleton over 2.5 meters tall. Reports from mound excavations across the Ohio Valley described the same details over and over: skulls with what witnesses called a double row of teeth, hip and thigh bones well beyond normal adult length, copper ornaments too large to fit any hand on record at the time. That copper, in several documented cases, had been carried from mines near the Great Lakes, hundreds of kilometers away, which tells you these were not isolated bands. There was trade, there was hierarchy. And if finds like this happened by the hundreds across an entire century, the next question is not whether they existed, it is where they went. The answer traces back to one man most people have never heard of. John Wesley Powell ran the Bureau of American Ethnology at the Smithsonian in the late 19th century, and he built the framework that decided which finds counted as science and which did not. Powell's model insisted human development on the continent was strictly linear, with no advanced civilization preceding the tribes the settlers encountered. Anything that contradicted that model got labeled a measurement error, a hoax, or a disease. This was not a neutral academic position. A continent with a lost advanced civilization complicated the narrative used to justify westward expansion. A researcher who later cataloged newspaper reports of giant remains found more than 1,000 of them published across the country. Not one of the original skeletons is available for independent study today. That is not proof of a cover-up on its own. But it is a pattern, and the pattern holds across an entire century of reports that all end the same way. Skeletons get measured, photographed, sometimes written up in a regional paper, and then handed over to an institution that promised to study them. After that, the trail runs cold. No peer-reviewed follow-up, no public storage record, no bone. And once you have seen how the bones disappeared, the buildings become harder to explain away, because stone does not vanish into a storeroom. In Baalbek, in modern Lebanon, the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter rests on 3 limestone blocks, the Romans themselves called the trilithon. Each one weighs roughly 800 tons. Nearby, in the same quarry, an unfinished block weighs more than 1,200 tons. No Roman engineering text describes moving stones anywhere near that scale. The largest crane described by the Roman architect Vitruvius could lift about 6 tons, with dozens of workers straining at it. Moving a 1,200-ton block by hand would require tens of thousands of people, far more than could physically surround the stone at once. A modern quarry truck, built to carry heavy loads, can manage 450 tons. It would take 3 of them working together to match a single trilithon block. So why cut a stone that cannot be moved by any method on record in a quarry and simply leave it there unfinished? The question only stops being strange under one assumption: that whoever cut it did not consider it unliftable at all. Picture a builder 10 or 12 meters tall, with musculature to match. An 800-ton block, for hands that size, stops being a miracle of engineering and starts being closer to ordinary labor. Scale problems like Baalbek's are not unique to Lebanon. Above Cusco in Peru, the fortress walls of Sacsayhuaman are built from interlocking blocks weighing up to 120 tons, fitted so precisely that a knife blade will not slide between them. The steps inside the fortress rise nearly half a meter, an awkward height for an ordinary adult, but a natural stride for something considerably larger. On the island of Malta, temple doorways dating back roughly 5,000 years are built well beyond human scale on an island that may have held only a few thousand residents at the time. The builders of those temples left no graves of their own, no descendants, no written explanation, as if the people who raised the stones simply stepped out of the historical record the moment the work was finished. In Egypt, The Serapeum at Saqqara holds granite sarcophagi weighing 70 tons apiece, polished to a mirror finish, sealed inside tunnels so narrow that two people can barely stand inside them together. There is no recorded method for lowering a 30-ton lid onto a box in a space that tight without modern equipment. When the site was excavated in 1850, every sarcophagus inside was already empty. Whatever these tombs were built to hold had already gone, and no record explains where, or how, or by whom. In 1935, a German paleontologist named Gustav von Königswald bought an unusually large tooth from a shop in Hong Kong. It belonged to a creature now called Gigantopithecus, the largest primate known to have existed. Gigantopithecus stood close to 3 meters tall and weighed roughly 500 kilograms, living across Southeast Asia until it disappeared around 100,000 years ago. That timeline overlaps directly with early Homo sapiens and Homo erectus. Science has no difficulty accepting a 3-meter primate. It has considerably more difficulty with a 3-meter human. The fossil record already contains other oversized branches of humanity. Denisovan remains found in Siberia's Altai region, show jaws and teeth notably larger than a modern human's, alongside tools showing precision drilling far earlier than expected for that era. Denisovan DNA still shows up today in Tibetans, in Papuans, in Australian Aboriginal populations, and it is specifically the Denisovan genes that let modern Tibetans live and work at altitudes where an unadapted person would struggle to breathe. If one branch of the human family tree grew larger and stronger than we did and left a genetic fingerprint we can still trace, the fossil record does not rule out another branch doing the same on a bigger scale that we have simply not connected the dots on yet. The usual objection to giant humans comes down to physics, not history. A body that large should not be able to support its own weight under current conditions. That argument only holds if conditions have always been current. One theory, still speculative and worth treating as exactly that, proposes that Earth's atmosphere was once considerably denser, with oxygen levels well above today's 21%. Paleontologists already confirm that during the Carboniferous period, insects and plants grew to sizes that would be impossible to sustain now, because insects breathe through simple tracheal tubes that cannot deliver oxygen efficiently at lower pressure. Under higher oxygen and pressure, bone density and healing both improve measurably, an effect modern hyperbaric medicine still uses today for wound recovery. Extend that effect across an entire era, and a height of 3 or 4 meters stops looking impossible and starts looking like a product of its environment. Ancient texts, from Genesis to the Vedas, describe individuals living for centuries and under sustained high oxygen conditions. That detail stops reading as pure exaggeration. The same theory offers an explanation for why that era could not last. AAA creature's height and its mass increases by a factor of roughly 27, while the cross-section of its bones only increases by a factor of 9. Under the theory, when the dense atmosphere thinned, the math turned against every large body on the planet at once, and the giants had nowhere to go but smaller, generation after generation, which is roughly the same pattern Genesis describes after the flood, when lifespans drop from 900 years to under 200 within a few generations. Which raises a colder question. If the atmosphere changed once, what happened to everything that was built for the atmosphere before it? Along the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, the first American settlers did not find untouched wilderness. They found thousands of earthworks, perfect circles, squares, and octagons, some large enough to enclose the Great Pyramid, visible only from far above ground level. The Newark earthworks align with a lunar cycle that repeats once every 18.6 years, a level of astronomical precision that required generations of continuous observation to achieve. The indigenous tribes who lived nearby at the time of European contact told settlers plainly, that they had not built the mounds either, that the structures belonged to an older people who had come before them and been wiped out in conflict. When farmers eventually opened the mounds, they found oversized remains wrapped in cloth, layered with copper ornaments, buried with a level of ceremony reserved for rulers rather than commoners. The bones point to giants. The texts point to giants. The architecture points to builders, working at a scale we have not matched since, using an astronomical precision that took generations of continuous observation to lock in. None of these three types of evidence come from the same discipline. None of them were built to support each other. A skeleton in a mound has nothing to do with a line in Genesis. A line in Genesis has nothing to do with an earthwork aligned to the moon. And yet all three keep landing on the same conclusion, from three directions that never coordinated with each other. That is the part official history has never fully explained. Not that the evidence exists, but that it keeps agreeing with itself. If their bones were dug up by the hundreds, if their buildings are still standing under our feet, and if every unconnected culture on Earth wrote the same warning into their oldest surviving texts, the real mystery is not whether they existed. It is how much of what came after them we built, without ever knowing what we were standing on. Every mound left unopened, every stone left unmoved, every text quietly dropped from the record is still out there, waiting for someone willing to ask why the story keeps repeating itself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more ancient mysteries and impossible discoveries.